We have breaking news out of the White House. I want to go straight to Caitlin Collins, who is reporting that news about Chief of Staff John Kelly. Caitlin.
That's right, Dana. John Kelly announced at a senior staff meeting here at the White House yesterday that President Trump asked him to remain on as the Chief of Staff for a little bit longer, at least through 2020, we are told by sources inside the White House. Now, Dana, that's surprising because it comes after weeks of speculation about what seemed to be an imminent departure from John Kelly, who has really lost his power and his standing in the West Wing since he came into the West Wing as the Chief of Staff last year, a year ago yesterday, to replace Reince Priebus. There has been much reporting and speculation about John Kelly lately, even by people inside the White House and even by President Trump himself, who has been polling aides and allies in recent weeks on what they thought of Kelly's performance. And at times he would fluctuate from complaining about Kelly and going off about him in profanity-laced tirades to the next day praising John Kelly in front of other staffers and telling them what a good job he is doing. Now, of course, in the weeks leading up to President Trump's swing through Europe, where he caused several chaos in the steps along the way, not only in the United Kingdom, but also at the NATO summit in Brussels, and during that infamous summit in Helsinki with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Before that trip, Dana, aides thought that John Kelly only had hours or days left in the White House. But they said afterward that the chaos of that trip helped cement his standing in the West Wing because it meant the president needed him a little bit more. And now it does seem as if the president is seeming to express some confidence in John Kelly, even though there was rampant speculation about his departure. One moment that really shows this, Dana, was yesterday in the Oval Office as the president was swearing in the new Veterans Affairs Secretary, Robert Wilkie. He gave John Kelly a shout out, something we haven't seen him do in recent days, saying that it was his 1 year, and Kelly smiled and saluted the president in return. And now with this latest reporting that he's sitting here asking John Kelly to remain on as Chief of Staff, he seems to be expressing some confidence in him. Of course, Dana, this has to come with the caveat that White House officials do not sign contracts. They are not guaranteed any amount of time in any White House, but especially this White House, where this president seems to change his mind sometimes on a near daily basis. But for right now, he does seem to be expressing a vote of confidence in his Chief of Staff, John Kelly.
Caitlin Collins, thank you so much for that great reporting. As always, appreciate it. Back around the table, Jeff Zeleny, you are our senior White House correspondent. You are there every single day. What does this say to you? I'll just say, as I ask you that question, just my initial take on what Caitlin was saying is that for somebody who is known to be apolitical and not have a political bone in his body, meaning John Kelly, this is very shrewd politically to get it out there that the president asked him to stay till 2020.
No doubt. I mean, this was said at a senior staff meeting as Caitlin was reporting, and this is John Kelly doing what he does is manage the staff. He is very much the staff part of the Chief of Staff, and he is sending the word to senior staff that, yes, indeed, the president has asked me to stay. So for all of those in the room who may not like me, I am here to stay till 2020. Now, as Caitlin said, no one at the White House signs a contract. This president, who knows? I mean, I would sign a short-term lease on any office space working in the Trump White House, but it does say this.
Maybe more than 10 days.
Right, exactly. It does say this, so there's no longer a fear of John Kelly that he has to hold, hanging over him, that he's going to be fired. He now has to make the decision how long he's going to stay. And up until now, there haven't been any lines that have happened that he's frustrated at times, but he is invested in this. But his portfolio, as you were saying about politics, it's so much smaller than it was. And going into the midterms and then into 2020, the president needs someone to sort of run the back of the house and keep, the foreign policy, other stuff running, not politics. So Chief of Staff, but he's not as strong as he was coming in. No question.
Yeah, I mean, no question about that. You're exactly right. And that was my point about him being shrewd, because he's making this his terms. He's putting this in his terms. He's saying he can stay till 2020. But it doesn't necessarily mean that he will decide to stay till 2020, right?
I think, that's exactly the point of this. He's really making the point that if he stays, it's going to be because he wants to be there and the president wants him there. And if he leaves, it's going to be because he wants to leave. This is all going to be done on Kelly's terms, whereas before it was really watching what the president was going to do. So for people who are wondering if John Kelly's going to stay or leave, don't watch Trump, watch Kelly. And, it's so interesting because whenever whenever you're, as reporters, we're working on stories about the White House will always emphasize, John Kelly's the chief of staff. He manages the staff. He doesn't manage the president, which former chiefs of staff would laugh out loud at. The chief of staff is really intended to be first among equals. He's the first person the president talks to during the day and the last person the president talks to at night. That is not the role John Kelly is playing in this White House, and it's why but I think that's precisely why the president wants to keep him around, because he doesn't manage this president.
And does it also mean that the other people who were floated out there to do the job either wouldn't or couldn't, or a combination of both?
Well, that's the question. Who's behind door number 3? I would also like to reflect for a moment on the fact that Reince Priebus was the chief of staff just 1 year ago. Feels like
that is crazy.
Much longer than that. I mean, if he makes it to 2020, he should get like the 40-year gift that you get at a normal job. Like that would, I don't know what that is, a card or a car. I don't know.
It's remarkable to think how many
Purple
near
heart.
exit. It's remarkable to think how many near exit or speculated near exit moments that John Kelly has had. Go back to Charlottesville when he just looked outright despondent during the president's press conference. There was a whole Rob Porter fiasco where people thought, his handling of that might lead to his forced exit, family separation. He was the face of that before it happened, talked about it being a deterrent. There were some reports that he said some insulting things about the president and portrayed himself as the savior in the White House. I'm reminded of something that a former Trump aide told me, and I think I mentioned this on this program at the time during the Rob Porter scandal, which is that President Trump doesn't like firing people as much as his reputation suggests.
Not at all.
There's always some crisis for him to deal with or create, and in the case of John Kelly, no one knows who would replace him.